The elevator doors slid open and Eleanor Vance stepped into the lobby, and stopped. Her eyes moved past James Quirr, past Diane Foster, past the receptionist who had suddenly discovered perfect posture, past Craig Bennett, who had materialized from nowhere with a smile so wide it looked painful. Eleanor's eyes landed on the woman sitting alone by the window, the woman with the leather portfolio on her lap, the woman who had been sitting in that exact chair for nearly 2 hours, the woman that everyone in this lobby had decided, without a single word, did not exist. Eleanor said 2 words. Just 2. And in that moment, Craig Bennett's entire career began to unravel. If you have ever been overlooked, underestimated, or made to feel invisible in a room you were born to lead, this story is for you. Stay until the end, because the ending will make your soul stand up. And if this is your first time here, subscribe and hit that notification bell, because we tell stories that refuse to be silenced. Imani Osei had not slept well. Not because she was afraid. She had moved past fear somewhere around midnight when she finished memorizing the company's last 3 annual reports. She hadn't slept well because she was ready, and readiness, the real kind, has a particular electricity to it that makes stillness almost impossible. She was up at 5. Shower running by 5:15. By 6 she was standing in front of her mirror in her navy blazer, the one she had dry cleaned specifically for today, turning slowly, checking every angle the way her mother had taught her. Not out of vanity. Out of respect. Respect for the opportunity. Respect for herself. Her mother called at 6:45, right on schedule. "You eat something?" her mother asked before Imani could even say good morning. "I had oatmeal. Real oatmeal or that packet nonsense?" "Mama, I'm just asking." There was a smile in her voice, the kind that carried 30 years of hard mornings behind it. "How are you feeling?" "I'm good," Imani said. "I'm really good." "You prepared?" "I've been preparing for 2 weeks." "Then you're more than prepared." Her mother was quiet for a moment, and Imani knew what was coming. She had heard it her whole life and she still needed to hear it. "Baby, you walk in there like you already belong. Because you do. Don't you dare shrink yourself for anybody in that room. You hear me?" "I hear you, Mama." "They should be nervous. Not you." Imani laughed, genuinely, fully, and the electricity in her chest settled into something warmer. Something solid. She grabbed her portfolio, her bag, her keys. She walked out into the morning like a woman who had already decided how this day would end. She arrived at Nexus Prime Tower at 9:43. 17 minutes early. The building rose 40 floors above the Phoenix Business District, glass and steel catching the early sun, the kind of building that was designed to make you feel small before you even walk through the door. Imani had read about that architectural trick in a book once. Buildings built to impress were also built to intimidate. She had decided weeks ago that she would not be intimidated. The lobby was cool and expansive. Marble floors. High ceilings. A curved reception desk staffed by a young woman with a headset and immaculate nails who was staring at her computer screen with the focused intensity of someone who had perfected the art of not looking up. Imani approached the desk. "Good morning. My name is Imani Osei. I have a 10 o'clock appointment with Craig Bennett, Director of Regional Operations." The receptionist typed something without looking up. Then she looked up, assessed Imani with a glance so brief it barely qualified as a glance, and pointed toward a row of chairs near the far window. "He'll be right with you. You can have a seat over there." Imani looked at the chairs. They were the kind with no table beside them, no charging station nearby, positioned just far enough from the main desk to feel like a waiting area for a completely different establishment. But she smiled, said thank you, and walked over. She sat down. She opened her portfolio across her knees, reviewed her notes one final time, and then closed it and placed her hands on top of it. She was ready. She would simply wait. At 10:05, she approached the desk again. "Just checking in. I want to make sure Mr. Bennett knows I'm here." "He knows," the receptionist said. "He's just finishing up a call. Shouldn't be long." Imani nodded and returned to her seat. At 10:20, the elevator opened and a man walked out. Broad shoulders, no tie, the kind of easy confidence that comes from never having had to work for a room's attention. He approached the desk, said something too quiet for Imani to catch, and within 90 seconds was being walked to the elevator by a member of staff, laughing at something, completely at ease. Imani watched him go. She did not recognize him. She had memorized every name on the company's organizational chart that was publicly available, and his face matched none of them. She looked down at her portfolio. She looked back up at the elevator doors as they closed. She stayed very still. There was a particular kind of discipline required in moments like this, the discipline of not letting what you know show on your face. Imani's mother had taught her that too. They will look for a reaction, she used to say. Don't give them the satisfaction of one. Save your feelings for people who deserve them. Imani straightened her posture and opened her portfolio again. At 10:40, a maintenance worker came through the lobby pushing a cart stacked with supplies. He was an older man, grey at the temples, moving with the deliberate calm of someone who had learned long ago that the world would not slow down for him, so he had simply found his own pace within it. His name tag read Earl. He passed Imani's row of chairs and slowed almost imperceptibly. Not enough for anyone else to notice. His eyes met hers for just a moment, and in that moment something passed between them that required no words and needed none. It was the look of someone who had also spent years being invisible in buildings that were never built with people like him in mind. He gave the smallest nod. The kind that says, I see you. I know what this is. Keep going. Imani exhaled slowly. She nodded back. Earl moved on. The lobby went back to ignoring both of them. But something in Imani had steadied. Some wire that had been pulled too tight had loosened just slightly, just enough. She sat back in her chair. She checked the time. 10:47. She had been waiting for 47 minutes. She decided she would wait until noon. If Craig Bennett had not seen her by noon, she would leave with her head high and her dignity fully intact. She would send a follow-up email that was so professionally written it would make him uncomfortable every time he read it. And she would find another door. But she was not leaving yet. She was not leaving yet. 11 o'clock arrived like a verdict. Imani had now been sitting in the same chair for 1 hour. Her water bottle was empty. Her phone battery had dropped to 19% and there was no charging outlet within reasonable distance of where she had been placed, and she had checked, discreetly, twice. She had reviewed her portfolio notes until she could have recited them backwards. She had watched 11 people pass through the elevator bay. None of them were Craig Bennett. None of them acknowledged her. She was not invisible because she was unnoticeable. She was invisible because the room had made a collective, unspoken decision to treat her that way. And the worst part, the part that sat in her chest like a stone, was that she understood exactly what was happening and could do absolutely nothing about it without making herself look like the problem. That was the trap. She had walked into it the moment she sat down. At 11:10 she went to the desk again. She kept her voice even, her smile present. I just want to confirm. Mr. Bennett is still expecting me? I've been waiting just over an hour. The receptionist had the grace to look slightly uncomfortable. Yes, I'll send him another message right now. Thank you so much, Imani said. She meant none of it and all of it simultaneously. She returned to her chair. At 11:22, she decided she needed a moment. Not a breakdown. She was nowhere near a breakdown. She was too disciplined for that, too aware of where she was and who might be watching. But she needed 60 seconds alone with herself. She needed to look at her own face and remind herself of who she was before this building, this chair, this lobby had spent an hour trying to redefine her. She walked to the restroom, pushed open the door, and stood in front of the mirror. She looked at herself for a long time. Really looked. The blazer still perfect. The portfolio still under her arm. Lipstick still intact. Eyes clear and steady. She said it quietly, to her own reflection, the way her mother had taught her to speak to herself when the world got loud. I know who I am. I know what I bring. This room does not get to tell me otherwise. She fixed a strand of hair that did not need fixing. She straightened a collar that was already straight. She took one long breath in and one long breath out. Then she pushed open the door and walked back into the lobby. She had been in the restroom for 4 minutes. When she returned to her chair, the receptionist did not look up. The lobby hummed with its usual indifferent energy. Nothing had changed. Except Imani. Something had crystallized in her in front of that mirror. Not anger. Anger would have been too expensive, too visible, too easily used against her. What had crystallized was something quieter and far more dangerous. It was clarity. She saw the situation for exactly what it was. She saw herself for exactly who she was. And the gap between those two things had never been more obvious or more offensive. She sat down. She placed her portfolio on her knees. She looked at the elevator doors. At 11:51, the elevator opened and Craig Bennett stepped out. Imani sat up. She prepared her expression. Professional, warm, ready. Craig Bennett did not look at her. He was mid-conversation with another man in a grey suit, both of them laughing at something. The easy laughter of two people who had never once had to wait for a room to notice them. They walked toward the main exit together, paused near the door, shook hands, clapped shoulders. Craig watched his colleague leave and then turned back toward the elevator. His eyes swept the lobby. They passed over Imani like she was furniture. He stepped back into the elevator. The doors closed. Imani did not move. She kept her face completely still. Beside her, her right hand had tightened around the edge of her portfolio so firmly that her knuckles had gone pale, but she released it slowly, deliberately, and smoothed her hand flat across the cover. The receptionist, across the lobby, had seen all of it. Imani knew because she saw the woman look away too quickly, the way people look away when they have witnessed something they do not want to be responsible for. Imani checked the time. 11:54. She had been in this lobby for 2 hours and 11 minutes. She thought about her mother. She thought about every early morning, every late night, every application, every rejection, every door that had taken 3 times as long to open for her as it would have for someone else. She thought about the stack of certifications in her apartment, the references she had cultivated over 7 years, the ideas she had, actual, concrete, well-researched ideas, that she had brought with her today in a color-coded folder that nobody in this building had bothered to ask about. She thought about Earl. His nod. The quiet solidarity of it. And she thought, I did not come this far to leave before the door opens. But she also thought, the door is not going to open. At 11:58, Imani Osei stood up. She picked up her portfolio. She smoothed her blazer. She straightened her back to its full height, which was considerable, and she began to walk toward the exit with the measured, dignified steps of a woman who was choosing to leave, not being driven out, not defeated, but choosing. There was a difference, and she needed the difference to be visible in how she moved. 1 step. 2 steps. 3 steps. The lobby doors were 12 feet away. She was not going to look back. She was not going to give this building that. And then she heard it. The soft mechanical exhale of elevator doors opening behind her. She did not stop walking immediately. She took one more step, almost involuntarily, the momentum of her decision still carrying her forward. But something made her pause. Something in the quality of the silence that followed the elevator opening. A shift in the room's atmosphere so sudden and complete it was almost physical. She turned. 3 people had stepped out of the elevator. But they had not come from upstairs. They had come from the parking structure. She could tell from the way they were still shedding the energy of the outside world, still mid-conversation, still carrying the particular forward momentum of people who had just arrived rather than people who had been circulating through the building all morning. At the center was a man she recognized immediately from the company website. James Quer, CEO of Nexus Prime. She had studied his photograph, his professional history, 3 interviews he had given to business publications in the last 2 years. In person he was quieter looking than his reputation suggested. Less performance, more presence. He was listening to the woman beside him as they walked. his attention fully on her words. The woman beside him was Eleanor Vance, Senior Director of Strategy. Also recognizable from the website, but what the website photograph had not captured was the precision of her. The way she spoke with her hands slightly, the way her eyes moved around the room as she talked, cataloging everything. She was the kind of person who noticed things. Behind them, Diane Foster, VP of Operations, scrolled through something on her tablet without breaking stride. The lobby responded to their arrival the way a compass responds to north. The receptionist's spine went rigid. 2 staff members who had been drifting appeared suddenly purposeful. And Craig Bennett, who had apparently been lurking near the elevator bay again, materialized with a smile that looked like it had been constructed in a hurry. "James, great timing. I was just about to send you a message about the Riverside numbers." James nodded without slowing. "Craig. Good. We'll get to that." Eleanor Vance had not broken stride either, but her eyes, those cataloging eyes, had completed their sweep of the lobby and landed on something. On someone. On Imani, who was standing 6 feet from the exit with her portfolio under her arm and her coat half turned toward the door. Eleanor stopped walking. Imani Osei. The sound of her own name, spoken clearly, warmly, with the easy confidence of someone who had been expecting to use it, stopped Imani more completely than anything else could have. She turned fully. "Yes," she said. Her voice was steady. She would be proud of that later. Eleanor crossed the lobby toward her with the decisive stride of a woman who did not take indirect routes. She extended her hand. "Eleanor Vance. I read your submission for the Regional Leadership Pipeline in December. I've been looking forward to meeting you in person." Imani shook her hand. "It's wonderful to meet you, Ms. Vance." "Eleanor, please." She turned slightly. "James, come here a second." Craig Bennett's smile had not moved, but something behind his eyes had gone very still. James walked over, genuinely curious. Eleanor said, "This is Imani Osei. She submitted one of the strongest strategic analyses we received for the leadership pipeline. The one I flagged for you in the January briefing." James's expression shifted. Recognition, then interest. He extended his hand. "Imani." "Yes. The regional market analysis." "That's right," Imani said. She felt something inside her expanding carefully, like a fist slowly opening. "I focused on the untapped mid-tier market segments in the southwestern corridor." "You suggested a phased entry model," James said. "I remember because it was the only submission that accounted for the infrastructure lag." "Most analyses treat infrastructure as a fixed variable," Imani said. "But in emerging markets, it's the most fluid element. You have to build the strategy around its limitations, or you'll be revising your timeline every quarter." James looked at Eleanor. Eleanor looked at James. "We're heading upstairs," Eleanor said to Imani. "We have a working session on the southwestern expansion that's been sitting on the agenda for 3 weeks. I think you should join us." She paused. "That is, what are you here for today?" Imani glanced, just briefly, at Craig Bennett. Craig Bennett had gone the particular color of a man who has just understood the full geometry of his mistake. "I had a 10 o'clock appointment," Imani said. Her voice carried no edge, no bitterness, just the clean, simple fact of it. "With Mr. Bennett." The silence that followed lasted approximately 3 seconds. In those 3 seconds, Eleanor Vance looked at Craig Bennett with an expression that was not angry, which somehow made it worse. It was the expression of someone filing information away for later. Diane Foster looked up from her tablet for the first time. James said nothing, but the quality of his silence had changed. Craig said, the schedule today has been." "It's fine," Imani said quietly. "Not for his benefit. For hers. It's absolutely fine." Eleanor turned back to her. "Come upstairs with us." Imani looked at the exit doors one final time. Then she turned away from them and walked toward the elevator. She did not look at Craig Bennett as she passed him. She did not need to. The elevator opened. Imani stepped in. Eleanor stepped in beside her. James Kwa followed. The doors began to close. In the last moment before they shut, Imani saw Craig Bennett still standing in the lobby, his manufactured smile finally gone, looking at the closed elevator doors with the expression of a man who has just watched something irreversible happen and knows there is nothing left to do but wait for the consequences to arrive. The elevator rose. Imani looked straight ahead and breathed. The 34th floor was nothing like the lobby. Where the lobby was designed to impress, the executive floor was designed to work. The ceilings were lower, the lighting warmer, the energy purposeful rather than performative. People moved through the space with the focused efficiency of those who had stopped needing to prove their right to be there. Eleanor led Imani into a large conference room where 4 other people were already seated. Laptops open, coffee cups in hand, the organized chaos of a working session that had not yet officially started. They looked up when the group entered. "Everyone," Eleanor said, "this is Imani Osei. She's joining us today." She said it the way you say something that doesn't require explanation or justification, just acceptance. Nobody questioned it. Imani was given a seat, a glass of water, and something she had not received once in the 2 hours she had spent in the lobby below: eye contact. The session was focused on Nexus Prime's proposed expansion into 3 southwestern markets. There were projections on the screen, a draft timeline, a resource allocation model that 2 of the people at the table were clearly already skeptical of. The conversation was smart and fast, and sometimes 2 people talked at once in the way that happens when everyone in the room is genuinely engaged. Imani listened for the first 10 minutes. She took notes. She mapped the conversation against everything she had researched in preparation for a meeting that had never happened downstairs, and she realized, with a clarity that was almost startling, that she had been preparing for this meeting without knowing it. The regional analysis she had submitted to the leadership pipeline. The market segmentation model she had spent 3 weeks building. The phased entry strategy that James Kwa had remembered from a January briefing. It was all relevant. It was all needed. It was all sitting in the color-coded portfolio that she had been clutching in a lobby chair for 2 hours, while Craig Bennett walked past her without seeing her face. She opened her portfolio. "Can I ask something?" she said. The conversation paused. People looked at her. Not with suspicion or surprise. Just attention. "The resource allocation model on slide 7, she said. "It assumes a simultaneous launch across all 3 markets. But if the infrastructure assessment I saw in your Q3 report is accurate, the Eastern Corridor won't be ready to absorb that volume for at least another 2 quarters. A simultaneous launch could actually underperform a phased approach by as much as 30%. Silence. Then someone across the table said, "She's right. I've been trying to say that for 3 weeks. James Kwa leaned forward. "What does the phased model look like?" Imani turned to a page in her portfolio. "I worked one out in December. It was part of my pipeline submission. The idea is you lead with the central market, strongest infrastructure, fastest absorption rate. Use the first 2 quarters to build brand recognition and iron out the operational model, then enter the eastern and western corridors sequentially with a refined playbook. The total revenue projection over 18 months is actually higher than the simultaneous model, with significantly less risk exposure." She turned the portfolio around so the table could see. James Kwa studied it. Eleanor Vance studied it. One of the other executives reached across the table and pulled it closer. The room had changed. Not loudly. Not dramatically. But the way a conversation changes when the right person says the right thing at the right moment, the axis of it shifts, and everyone in the room feels it shift, and nobody needs to announce that it has happened. They worked for another hour. Imani contributed 3 more times. Each time, the room engaged with what she said seriously, challenged it intelligently, built on it genuinely. By the end of the session, 2 elements of her phased model had been incorporated into the revised proposal on the screen. When the meeting ended and people began gathering their things, James Kwa walked around the table to where Imani was closing her portfolio. "How long have you been working on this analysis?" he asked. "The initial version took about 3 weeks, she said. "I've been refining it since December." And you submitted it through the leadership pipeline application? Yes. He nodded slowly. I'm going to be honest with you, Imani. The pipeline process is slower than it should be. Some strong candidates fall through the gaps. He paused. I don't want that to happen here. Eleanor appeared beside him. I'll be in touch directly, she said to Imani, and gave her a card. Not through the standard pipeline process. Directly. My personal line is on the back. Imani took the card. She looked at it for a moment. Then she looked up. Thank you, she said. Both of you. She said it simply without performance, because the gratitude was real and she had learned a long time ago that real things deserve real language. 4 days later, her phone rang. Eleanor's personal line. The offer that followed was not for the regional operations position she had originally applied for. It was for a newly created role, regional strategy lead, reporting directly to Eleanor, with a documented 18-month path to executive level and a salary that made Imani sit down on her kitchen floor and call her mother. They created a role, she told her mother. They built a position because of the work. Her mother was quiet for a long moment. Then she said, Baby, that's not luck. That's what happens when you're so ready that they have to make room. 3 days after Imani accepted the offer, Craig Bennett was quietly reassigned. The announcement was brief and internal, the kind of language organizations use when the real story is too complicated for a company-wide email. But the real story, which moved through the building the way real stories always do, was that formal complaints about Craig's conduct during candidate screening. Complaints that had been accumulating for longer than anyone had formally acknowledged, had finally reached the right desk at the right time. His reassignment was not a coincidence. It was a consequence. There is a difference, and the difference matters. On her first day in her new role, Imani walked into a conference room on the 34th floor. Not as a guest. Not as a visitor. Not as a candidate waiting to be seen. She walked in as the person running the meeting. She stood at the head of the table and looked at the faces looking back at her. A room full of people with sharp minds and strong opinions and the particular energy of professionals who were not easily impressed. She opened her portfolio. She looked up. Good ideas don't care where they come from, she said. This team won't either. That's not a value statement. That's a standard. And I'm going to hold all of us to it, including myself. She clicked to the first slide. Let's get to work. Later, much later, when people would ask Imani Osei about the day that changed everything, she never started with the conference room on the 34th floor. She never started with Eleanor saying her name or James Quer remembering her analysis or the offer that made her sit on her kitchen floor. She always started with Earl. With an older man pushing a supply cart through a lobby that had decided to make her invisible, who slowed almost imperceptibly as he passed her chair, and met her eyes, and gave the smallest nod that cost him nothing and gave her everything she needed to stay in her seat for 1 more hour. Because sometimes the thing that changes your life is not the recognition that finally comes. Sometimes it is the quiet human moment that tells you, before the world has figured it out, that you are worth staying for. She had stayed. The room had caught up. And she had been ready when it did. If Imani's story moved you, if you have ever been made to wait in a room that was not ready to see you yet, drop a comment below and tell me about it. This community is built for stories like yours. Like this video if Imani's strength resonated with you, share it with someone who needs to hear it today, and subscribe so you never miss a story that refuses to be silent. We will see you in the next one.